On a lighter note, people often will ask me that, how much science do I have to read to be able to debunk all this pseudoscientific nonsense on social media about food and all of that? And I often give them in a very light-hearted way, a very simple heuristic to tell nonsense about food from serious stuff about food, is to say that if it came from your grandmother, there's a good chance that it's practical working heuristic wisdom in the kitchen. Listen to that. If it came from your grandfather, it's probably nonsense. So take advice on cooking from people who cook.
Right. They have to deal with the real.
They have to deal with real things. So nonsensical ideas won't survive. Right. And I think, you're far more likely to find hidden nuggets of wisdom, including even to do with basic wellness and so on. They'll have that intuitive wisdom that's being passed on, and you don't have to lose that. Right. But you take it completely out of context, and people theorizing about random things, trying to prove something with science with using very bad science, and so on, is where the problem is.
It's coming from prachar, right? It's from proselytizing.
Yes.
When moment somebody wants to convince me of something, I'm very suspicious.
Yes.
Because I'm like, if it's science, it doesn't need to be sold.
It has, yeah.
Science doesn't need to be sold.
It must not
Science
be
is not sold. Marketing and science don't get along. Science is iti.
Yes.
And Sanskrit, the word would be iti. It is so.
Yes.
You want to accept it? Good. You don't want to accept it? It is so.
It is so.
You have got this deficiency of anemia. Take this.
Facts don't care about your feelings.
Yeah. As simple as that. Whether you're superior, inferior, and all that. And I think that's an important thing to. For me, Vedanta and science and philosophy helps you become a better scientist, because it takes away the ego that wants you to be casteist and racist and regionalist and paneer is better, or ghee made out of malai is better. And I'm like, okay, if you say so. Good for your... See, food taboos, right? Like, for example, in Islam, there is not eating pork.
Yes.
If you go to Arab countries, they'll give you pseudoscience. Why the Prophet told you not to eat.
And they'll justify it with science.
They'll justify it, and I'm like, really, that's not true. But okay, if it makes you feel good, you don't have to eat it. It's perfectly fine. But please don't call it science. It's a cultural practice that you do.
Much like Jains don't eat stuff under the ground, they don't eat certain things, they don't eat meat.
Respect that belief, but it's not science. It's not based on science. For the Chinese, in an auspicious prosperity is pig.
Yes.
You have to eat pork. Pork fat is...
The Chinese word for meat is pork.
Oh, is it?
Literally, yes.
See, they celebrate pork.
Yes.
At another level. I didn't realize how big it is until ceremonies. Everything is about pork.
It's likely to have been domesticated in that part of the world.
So it's very funny, but across the world, domesticated pigs were always not liked.
Yes.
While the wild pig was considered to be very sacred.
Yes.
So you have, the Kirat Arjun story where the Arjun is hunting a wild boar. The famous Kantara film which talks about the wild boar.
Indeed.
And it's a wild boar that people don't realize. The Varaha avatar is a wild boar.
Yes.
So wild boar hunting amongst kings was a very big sport.
Yes.
The domesticated pig was considered to be associated with Chandal.
Correct.
And even in the
Unhealthy,
unclean. So there is the caste angle coming in.
Yes.
India is the only country where people who cleaned society were declared unclean. They are the ones for keeping your society clean. Instead of respecting them and worshipping them, you started saying that they were unclean. And the funny thing is, even Shiva is called a Chandal earlier books.
Yes.
He comes from the Chandal space.
Yes.
But then you Brahmanize him.
Yeah.
And you quickly put a sacred thread around him and you put him in the temple. And he stops being if you see the Bhairava images, the Chandal images, and this confrontation with Daksha Prajapati, where he is the wild one. He is Rudra. He is Yajurveda.
What he eats, what he smokes, the association with marijuana. Ganja.
The Datura. So when you go to once I went to one of the Shiva temples and I saw this offering, and I knew it was bhang, and I knew he had put hemp, marijuana, and he had put Datura fruits on it.
Yes.
So I, in my own way, said, "Ye kya hai?" And I could see the guy was getting irritated. I said, "What is this? What is this?" He said, "Ye Shivji ka prasad hai." Don't ask me these questions. But I knew it was Datura and I knew what it was.
Yes.
These are hallucinogens because they came from, and this was the confrontation. And well, if you want to consider mythology as history, it happens around Haridwar.
Yes.
In that region, there was a confrontation between the people who were outside society, the jungle people, and the Brahminical people. And then finally compromise was through the daughter, the marriage, which is Daksha Prajapati's daughter marrying Shiva. And then later the king of the mountain giving his daughter. So there is a kind of a compromise happening between two schools of thought. Shiva
Yes.
indicates that.
Yeah.
Vishnu is far more Vedic and Brahmanical. Not entirely, but there is a strong, more strength over here. And you see this ideas coming, and therefore Shiva is originally associated with the dog. He's associated with all kinds of things which are
Yes.
impure and polluted.
And death.
And
many
death,
other
and
things, yeah.
dead bodies, and Rundamala and Mundamala. And
Yes.
if Chamunda is described, if you see the images of Chamunda in the temples, they are fierce with
Fierce, yeah.
scorpions and wolves and dogs and vultures.
Yeah.
And I think they're trying to tell you that everything is sacred.
Yes.
Just say, you
So
may
the-
not
the-
want to
yeah.
go there.
So you cannot have sacredness without profanity. And the beauty of philosophy in this part of the world is that the profane is also sacred.
And I think we lost that somewhere, because originally there would be these gods in the forest whom you'll give alcohol, whom you will give. You may not eat it, but it's for them.
It's for them,
So
yeah.
you are always told कि नहीं वो उनके लिए है. It's
yeah.
food for that one. And I think this ability to say that I don't need to eat it, but it is their food,
Yes.
is what made India a great country.
Yeah.
My food, what the Gurujis nowadays do, and I'm sorry I always take the Guruji example, but I'm horrified when they're like, basically what I eat is the best food in the world. And I'm like, ooh,
Yeah.
like the privilege is bursting forth
Yeah,
from
yeah,
you.
exactly.
That,
That you fail to recognize simply that what you eat is just purely largely a product of what you grew up eating.
I know
Which is
the
products of
famous
your
story of
circumstance,
Draupadi. One day Krishna coming to Draupadi and saying, "What is there to eat?" And she has nothing, and this dry rice on her finger, literally jhuta khana uske
Yes.
haath mein, and he says, "Oh, that's good enough for me."
Yes.
So God eats jhuta, Krishna eats jhuta,
Yes.
Ram eats jhuta, which is the bear, and they'll of
Yes,
course make
the
it
bear.
very devotional and all
Yes,
that. But I'm like, no, he's saying this notion of purity.
Correct.
Somebody who wrote the story was being a revolutionary and saying
Yes.
that, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
You have
Why are you looking at food through the lens of purity,
Purity and
and impurity?
impurity.
And this story should tell you that you don't need
to do that. And I think that is what, there's always been a counter current in India.
Yeah.
And I prefer highlighting the counter current, because
Correct, yeah.
the purity discourse.
And that is also the beauty that you can find.
Yeah.
So that's the funny thing, right? So people will use mythology in a weaponized way to promote their ways of eating. That sattvic, vegetarian, just basically whatever the people, elites in the Indo-Gangetic plain ate, just became sattvic food.
Sattvic food. No, and it's, whenever I hear a Gita discourse, I always hear whether somebody is referring to sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. Because the moment you bring hierarchy, you bring ego.
Exactly, yeah.
You are not saying, okay, sattvic food is for this, rajasic food is for that, tamasic food for this. So you are relaxing on a Friday evening.
Yes.
You're going to eat tamasic food. You're going to drink fermented
grains and
products,
alcohol.
which is
Yeah,
basically
yeah.
alcohol.
Alcohol,
Distilled didn't exist in India. It came from
And plus, actually, you cannot have grain-based agriculture and not have alcohol.
alcohol.
It's just the nature will ferment.
They will just ferment it. The rice
Yeah.
will be the
Will
toddy,
ferment it.
sake, all
Yeah,
these things,
yes.
grapes and all the fruits and the mahua plant.
Everything will
So,
ferment, yeah.
But every tribal community knows you don't do it 24/7.
Yes.
You will have it on certain days. There are ritualized ways of eating tamasic food.
See, triple distilled and these things, again, post-colonial.
Post-colonial.
And the weapon, I mean, the real damage that really drinking 50% alcohol does to you is very much a post-colonial phenomenon.
See, I always look at tribal communities. Alcohol is consumed after the harvest season is done, in the evening. There is a ritualized, controlled mechanism. Even in South America, where they do these mushrooms and everything, it's all done in highly controlled ritual
manner,
conditions.
yeah.
Because I don't think
Ayahuasca, yeah.
anybody's a fool. They know that these are dangerous stuff.
Yes.
And they're like, but you need a little bit of, it's like eating bitter food.
Yeah.
Your health needs a little bit of
No,
bitter food, a
alkaloids
little
and
bit
so-
of
yeah, yeah,
poison.
yes.
In the same way, your body needs to relax. You need to have
Yes.
chill, chill and...
Yeah. And yet we've sort of built this antagonistic relationship to alcohol on the basis of essentially the fact that this 50%, distilled alcohol that had to be made in factories then was introduced to the population, and now we associate alcoholism as a problem amongst the working class.
No,
is
and
very much a
like Balarama, Krishna's brothers, Balarama's the flag is the tad tree, the toddy tree, because he loves toddy. And in the Shilpa Shastra, description of Balarama and his wife
Yes.
is of a man looking drunk, holding a cup of alcohol. His wife is holding the bottle, and husband and wife are happily drunk.
Yes.
Now this imagery of Balaram and his wife consuming Varuni, and Varuni, by the way, comes from the Kshirosagar Manthana. So when the ocean of milk was churned, all symbols of luxury emerged.
Yes.
Amongst them was alcohol.
Yes.
Varuni. Fermented, obviously. In those days, there was, as I said, fermented is something which we see. But the idea that they have accepted that even the gods will drink Sura,
Right, yeah.
that it's part of life. So Tamasa has a space.
Yes.
Sattva has a space.
Rajasa.
Rajasa, you are going, you're doing physical activity, you're going to the gym every day, you need a high protein diet.
And also you need and so the character itself is associated with a sense of ambition and strength and power. And those are, like the whole symbolism of the different characters in the Mahabharata being character archetypes. Nobody actually should be like Yudhishthira all the time. That's incredibly annoying, right? He's the most annoying character. Insufferable, pompous. Right?
Yes.
So in a sense that, Bhima is like forever angry. So Arjuna represents that balance. And it's the same thing here, right? I think you're supposed to have...
So when I see this Rajasic and people are then... See, India talks about diversity. The West turns diversity into division and makes it homogeneous.
Yes.
And the Gurudam, and I use the word Gurudam very strongly, creates hierarchy.
Yes.
To say this is better.
Superior.
And inferior. Nature does not... Nature loves diversity. It doesn't like homogeneity. It doesn't like hierarchy. And whenever I see homogeneity, that everybody should eat this food, or everybody should, this is better and that is worse, and this food is better than that food, or when the acharyas are saying, are you saying Ram ate deer meat in the forest? And I'm like, how do you know? Calm down. Obviously, your sattvic food is not working. Because you obviously are not gentle and generous and kind.
And open-minded.
Because that's what sattvic food is theoretically supposed to do. Make you kinder, not scream for blood.
Help you actually appreciate, turn inward and help you appreciate the larger philosophy.
And I tell people that, on a Sunday morning, you are having a party, you are going to have a lot of Rajasic food. On a Friday evening, you might probably have tamasic food. If you're going to do this 24/7, you are going to affect your health.
Absolutely.
And sattvic food just balances that out, but it's going to be boring. One day you will want to have a chart and say, I want a little bit of masala.
That's the original detox diet.
So you have a balance of the food. And the varnas, all these were about diversity. We made it about hierarchy. When diversity becomes hierarchy, when diversity becomes division, ego has entered, which the Upanishads have warned us. Be careful of this thing. It's going to ruin your life.
It's multiple roads, not multiple floors.
That's so true. It's multiple roads, not multiple floors.
And somehow I think we're trained to think in terms of floors. When this is a country with just a lot of roads. And just so many. And more importantly, somehow, without glorifying it too much, that there has been a preference for intermixing, adapting and mixing ideas before, taking out your sword. Right?
Explaining the science of food and debunking pseudoscience is hard work. So I request you to consider becoming a member of this channel. Members get to be part of a private group that will work together to dig into the science of food in far more detail and also discover the true joy of food.